Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. We are live on WION Wild as One. We are glad you're watching. Time now for Pulse American Joker. The headlines. President Trump tells people of Iran to keep protesting and take over all the institutions and says help is on its way. This as the death toll in Iran unrest rises to 2,000. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to convene Israel's Security Cabinet on Iran protests. Five European countries, the UK, France, Germany, Finland and Denmark, have summoned Iran's ambassadors. They have urged the Iranian government to end the violence against its own citizens amid widespread protests. Russia batters Ukraine with more than 24 missiles and hundreds of drones, killing 4 people and pummeling another power plant, piling more pressure on Ukraine's brittle energy system. Greenland Prime Minister says that it chooses Denmark over US. This ahead of high-stakes talks about Greenland's future at the White House with US Vice President J.D. Vance, who has accused Denmark of neglecting its autonomous territory. All eyes will be on US President Donald Trump next week as politicians and business leaders head to the World Economic Forum. Trump will lead the largest US delegation ever. This comes 6 years after his appearance during his first term. Crude climbs to a 2-month high after US President Donald Trump amped up his rhetoric over Iran. Benchmark Brent oil hit $65 per barrel as geopolitical risks swirl from Iran to the Black Sea. The US Supreme Court hears challenges to bans on transgender athletes. 2 cases before the justices could affect laws in 27 states that prohibit transgender girls from joining girls and women's sports teams.
The Arctic just turned into a global battlefield, and this time the warning came straight from none other than US President Donald Trump. Speaking directly to the people of Greenland, Trump delivered a message that stunned capitals across Europe. He said Greenland is critical to America's national security. He said that the US needs it. And then came the line that changed everything, one way or the other. You're watching Times XP. My name is Vidya 3, and let's pause here because those words are now echoing across NATO. Greenland is not a random island, right? It sits at the heart of the Arctic. It controls the key air and sea routes. It is close to Russia. It watches China's Arctic ambitions, and the US already has a major military base over there. Trump is saying this now that is not enough for him. That's right. According to reports, Trump has asked the US Special Forces to quietly prepare options. Not for aid, not for partnership, but for a possible takeover. Now, this is unprecedented, right? Greenland is an autonomous territory. It belongs to Denmark. Denmark is a NATO ally, which means that if this happens, the US would be threatening a NATO partner. Inside Washington, alarm bells are ringing. Senior military officials are reportedly warning the White House that such a move can be illegal without Congress. Others fear that it could destroy America's credibility with its allies. Some are openly calling it reckless. But of course, Trump is Trump, he's unmoved. And now comes the offer here. Trump did not just threaten, he tempted. He spoke of prosperity, security, jobs, American protection. The message was clear here. Join the US and be richer, safer and smarter. Now to the Greenlanders, it sounds more like a pressure. To Denmark, it sounds like provocation. Copenhagen is very angry. Danish leaders have made it crystal clear that Greenland is not for sale. Greenland will decide its own future and any US move would cross a red line here. European allies are closing ranks behind Denmark. NATO, already under strain, is now facing a shock that it never prepared for. The question is, why is Trump doing this now? Because Arctic is changing fast. Ice is melting, new shipping routes are opening, rare earth minerals are becoming accessible. Missile defense positions matter more than anything else. Trump sees Greenland as the ultimate strategic prize. A shield against Russia, a counter to China, basically a permanent American foothold in the Arctic. And here's the real danger. If the US pushes too far, it risks turning allies into adversaries. It risks breaking NATO from inside, and it risks turning the Arctic into the next global flashpoint. So, in the end, where does this leave the world? Greenlanders, they are angry and anxious. Denmark is defiant. Europe is alarmed. Washington is divided. And Trump, well, he is doubling down. The message is no longer subtle. Greenland is no longer just ice and snow. It is power, it is strategy, and it is now at the center of a confrontation nobody ever expected. An idea once laughed off as political theatre is now stepping into a world of real law, real power, and real consequences. You're watching Times XP. It's me, Dhriti Athri. In the United States, a move that once sounded impossible is all of a sudden being discussed seriously inside Congress, and it involves one of the most sensitive regions on the planet. That region is Greenland. Well, a Republican lawmaker has now introduced formal legislation that would allow President Donald Trump to begin the process of acquiring Greenland and eventually placing it on the path towards becoming part of the US. Well, this is not a comment. This is not a campaign speech. It is a written proposal moving through the political system right now. And yes, the man behind this particular push is Florida Congressman Randy Fine. His argument is bold, deeply strategic. He says that Greenland is too important to remain outside American control, specifically in a world where global power is shifting northwards. According to him, the Arctic is no longer frozen and distant. It is becoming the next global frontline. But you know, why Greenland and why now? Well, supporters of the proposal point to the geography first. Greenland sits between North America, Europe, and the Arctic routes that are opening as ice melts. It lies closer to Russia than many Americans realize and near the key shipping lanes that could define future trade and military moment. Control of Greenland, they argue, is about controlling access now. And then comes the issue of the resources here. Greenland is believed to hold vast reserves of rare earth minerals, which are very important for advanced weapons, electric vehicles, and high-tech industries. These are the same material, by the way, that global powers are racing to secure. Now, in US's view, allowing rivals to dominate these resources is seen as long-term risks. Congressman Fine, he insists that acquisition would be voluntarily. He says that Greenland's people should choose their future and that the process should happen through negotiation and not by force. However, that reassurance has not calmed the critics here, because when asked directly, officials supporting the broader idea, they have refused to clearly rule out of the use of military power here. You know, that silence has made many of them nervous. In fact, adding fuel to the fire, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio is expected to raise the Greenland issue in talks with Denmark this particular week. Denmark is currently governing Greenland, And the idea of a US move towards ownership or statehood, it has already caused unease in Copenhagen. Now for Denmark, this is not just diplomacy, this is about sovereignty. In fact, you know what? The reaction internationally has been swift and kind of uneasy for the US. Allies are asking whether the US is rewriting old rules about border and consent or not. Critics warn that turning territorial acquisition into legislative gold could destabilize global norms. Supporters respond by saying that the world has already changed and security now demands bold actions here. Well, this particular proposal also fits a broader Trump-era worldview, a belief that America must expand its strategic footprint, a belief that hesitation creates a weakness, a belief that power must be claimed before rivals take place. In that framework, Greenland is not a land, it is a leverage. So the world is asking, what happens next? Well, if this particular bill advances, it would give President Trump legal authority to explore negotiations, incentives, long-term integration plan. Even if it fails, the conversation itself have already crossed the line now. You know, what was once unthinkable is now being debated openly. So the bigger question in the US and the world is this: is this about security or is this about ambition? Is it about protecting the future or reshaping it by force? And where does this leave international law in a world of rising power politics? One thing is clear here: Greenland is no longer just an icy island on the map. It has become a symbol of a new and sharper geopolitical age.
Nu står vi med en geopolitisk krise, og hvis vi skal vælge mellem USA og Danmark her og nu, så vælger vi Danmark. Vi vælger NATO, vi vælger kongeriget Danmark, vi vælger EU. Men én ting skal alle forstå: Grønland vil ikke ejes af USA. Grønland vil ikke styres af USA. Grønland vil ikke være en del af USA. Vi vælger det Grønland, vi kender i dag, og som er en del af kongeriget Danmark.
I morgen der mødes Grønland og Danmark med USA. Vi kommer sammen, vi bliver sammen, og vi går sammen. Vi vil gerne dialogen, og vi vil gerne samarbejde. Vi søger ikke nogen konflikt, men vores budskab er klart: Grønland er ikke til salg. Det har vi gjort klart fra starten, ligesom vi fra begyndelsen af alt det her har sagt til amerikanerne, at hvis det handler om sikkerhed, så er der meget mere, vi kan og skal gøre i fællesskab, og det vil vi også gentage på mødet i morgen. Det har ikke været nemt at stå op imod et helt uacceptabelt pres fra vores nærmeste allierede igennem en menneskealder, men meget tyder samtidig på, at det sværeste nu ligger foran os.
By the way, to all Iranian patriots, keep protesting, take over your institutions if possible, and save the name of the killers and the abusers that are abusing you. You're being very badly abused. If the numbers are right now, I hear 5 different sets of numbers. I hear numbers, look, 1 death is too much. But I hear much lower numbers, and then I hear much higher numbers. But I say save their names because they'll pay a very big price. And I've canceled all meetings with the Iranian officials until the senseless killing of protesters stops. And all I say to them is help is on its way. You saw that I put tariffs on anybody doing business with Iran. Just went into effect today. And I say make Iran great again. You know, it was a great country until these monsters came in and took it over.
Iran is spiraling into chaos, and the world is watching every move here. From Tehran's crowded streets to the corridors of power, tension is at breaking point now. Over 200 people have been arrested. Here, Iranian authorities say they are Israeli-American terror organizers, accused of plotting violence, stirring unrest, and undermining the regime. Weapons and explosives, they were reportedly seized. The government claims that this crackdown has slowed the protests, but the reality on the ground tells a different story. Ladies and gentlemen, you are watching Times XP. My name is Dhriti Atri. The streets remain restless. Thousands of protesters continue to march despite the arrests. Chants echo through Tehran, Shiraz, Bandar Abbas. People are defying curfews, they are defying the fear, they are defying a regime desperate to show control. And in the meantime, the tensions isn't just inside Iran. Across the world, US President Donald Trump has made his stance crystal clear. He supports Iranians demanding freedom like never before. This public backing has only escalated Tehran's rhetoric, with their supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei accusing US of fueling the unrest further. Warnings are flying. Khamenei has told protesters that severe consequences await for anybody who challenges the regime. On the other hand, you have Trump. He's signaling readiness for what he calls an Iranian mission, keeping US military options open as the crisis intensifies. But you know what this means on the ground? The arrests of alleged foreign-linked organizers are part of a larger strategy here to intimidate, disrupt network and regain the control. And yet, each detainment seems only to fuel the anger here, inspiring even more citizens to join the protests and demand the change. Well, the standoff is no longer just a domestic issue. The world is watching Tehran's every move, be it diplomats, analysts, military experts. They all are weighing in what comes next. If tensions spiral further, Iran could really face not just internal unrest but a dangerous confrontation with global powers. Inside Iran, the pressure is relentless. Families are terrified, streets are monitored. In fact, communications, well, they are restricted as well. But you know what? Resistance continues for many. Hope is stronger than fear. This is a critical point. Will the regime tighten its grip even further, risking more violent clashes? Or will international pressure and relentless protest push Tehran towards change now? One thing is certain, ladies and gentlemen, Iran's crisis is far from over. Every move, from arrests to speeches, from street protests to global threats, it can reshape the future of the nation and the entire region.
Britain's top military commander has dropped a bombshell admission. Head of the Armed Forces Richard Knighton has told Parliament that the United Kingdom is not ready for war, not even close. And behind the scenes, the military faces a staggering $35 billion shortage that could cripple the nation's defense for years.
The admission is stark and unsettling. Britain cannot currently fight a full-scale war. That warning comes not from critics, but from the top of the military itself. The head of the armed forces, Richard Knighton, has said UK is not as ready as it needs to be for the kind of conflict it could face. In plain terms, the country that once ruled the seas is struggling to prepare for modern war.
Over the last 30 years since the end of the Cold War, we are not as ready as we have taken a peace dividend, and we are not as ready as we need to be for the kind of full-scale conflict that we might face. And that's how we ultimately deter our principal adversary, is through being ready to fight and win. And part of that is also about how we modernise and transform the armed forces to make sure they're ready for that fight.
Years of cuts have hollowed out the force. Troop numbers are down, ammunition stocks are low, equipment is aging, readiness is fragile. In a world sliding back towards great power confrontation, Britain is running on fumes. Past reports tell the same story. Parliamentary committees have repeatedly warned that the UK would run out of key munitions within days of a high-intensity conflict. Defense chiefs have admitted the military is at its smallest size since the Napoleonic Wars. Warships sit idle for lack of crews. Jets wait on the ground for spare parts. Yet the threats are rising fast. Russia's war in Ukraine has reshaped Europe's security. China is expanding its military reach. West Asia remains volatile. Cyber warfare and space warfare are no longer theoretical. They are raging in real time. The modern battlefield is unforgiving. Wars are decided by logistics, stockpiles, and speed. Ukraine has shown how quickly ammunition disappears. Britain, officials admit, would struggle to sustain even a short, intense fight. This is not about panic. It is about reality. The UK still has elite forces, nuclear deterrence and global alliances, but the troop strength matters. Weapon stockpiles matters. Preparation matters. London's warning is a signal flare. Either Britain rebuilds its ability to fight and deter, or it risks discovering its weakness the hard way. History shows that admitting unpreparedness is dangerous, but ignoring it is worse.
frontier of fiction is colliding with the cold reality of the war room as the Pentagon bets its soul on the machine. Pete Hegseth and Elon Musk are promising a Star Trek future. Elon Musk's xAI platform, Grok, will be integrated into US military networks as part of a new AI acceleration strategy. But what happens when the machines take control of the world's most powerful military? Take a look at this report.
America is building the military of the future. One that has an artificial mind at the helm. The corridors of power are buzzing with a radical vow to turn science fiction into battlefield supremacy. The blueprint for the next world war is being written in lines of code. U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth has announced an audacious plan to transform the U.S. military into an AI-driven force, with Musk's technology leading the charge. Autonomous drones, space superiority, and weapons that think faster than any human commander ever could.
Very soon we will have the world's leading AI models on every unclassified and classified network throughout our department. Long overdue. To further that, today at my direction, we're executing an AI acceleration strategy that will extend our lead in military AI established during President Trump's first term.
They call it the Star Trek future, a vision of sleek drones, orbital dominance, and AI-driven precision. The goal is clear: outpace China and Russia. Musk's Grok AI is already infiltrating the system, promising a lightning-fast edge that human minds simply cannot match.
It's not always science fiction, but one day the science fiction turns to science fact. And we have spaceships going through space, big spaceships, with people going to other planets, going to the moon, and ultimately going beyond our star system to other star systems where we may meet aliens.
Hegseth says Grok will go live inside the Defense Department later this month. Data from intelligence databases would be fed into AI systems. But experts are worried at what happens when the machines take control. Will there be guardrails? What about the nuclear weapons? Will an AI take control of them too? Well, the existing rules framed under the Biden administration mandates that no automated systems would control the nuclear weapons. But will the Trump administration adhere to those guardrails? AI has a mind of its own. It works on logic which is devoid of consequences at times. Internal simulations have pulled back the curtain on a terrifying reality. When pushed into crisis scenarios, almost every major AI model chose the path of maximum violence. They didn't seek diplomacy, they calculated total destruction. The Silicon Mines showed a chilling preference to escalate aggressively, deploying firepower indiscriminately. In the most harrowing drills, the AI didn't just win the war, it ended the world, reaching for the nuclear trigger before a human could even blink. This is not science fiction anymore. It is strategy, power, and risk, moving at machine speed. The Pentagon's gamble is historic. Build smarter weapons to prevent war, while trusting that the machines never decide to start one. Because once AI controls the battlefield, there may be no pause button. Bureau Report WION World is one.